There's only 24 hours in a day. I got a pair of earbuds and I wish there was a way that I could know just what I want to listen to. There's 150,000 shows that I'm not sitting through. When the world is dark and boring, let us do your exploring. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Welcome to Pod on Pod, a guide to the world of podcasts, because it's not your daddy's radio. We're your hosts.
I'm Josh.
I'm Joel, and we are not in our home studio.
No, not at all.
We have been exiled far, far from
Banished.
the home I love.
Banished to the desert.
Really, we're like literally 2 doors down. We're in a nicer studio, in fact, than we normally are. We're with more professional
It doesn't matter
equipment.
if it's nice or it's not ours.
It's not ours, and I don't know exactly how to balance it. So I'm sorry if this thing doesn't sound like normal. We are the same people that you know and love, or hate, however it might be, bringing you a weekly podcast review at podonpod.com. And we are glad to, for the first time in a while, be back 1 week after the last one.
On schedule?
Yeah, that's right. On schedule. Yeah, here we are, folks. Today's episode, we're going to be talking to you about That God Show. I tweeted out and posted a link on our Facebook page, which, by the way, you can follow us and keep up with the conversation all week long on Facebook at Pod on Pod. Just search for us there, or on Twitter by following at Pod on Pod. And this week I posted out some links to this show so you could sample it ahead of time with us. But we're going to break it down for you. Every week on Pod, we talk about a different podcast by discussing its audio quality, the host likability, the production values, the content, and then we talk about some of our favorite moments, and then we rate the thing overall. This week's show, That God Show. Josh, you want to tell us what the heck this show is about?
In a second, I will. I feel like... because we're doing this show, we should just get some info off the top.
Okay.
All right. Number one, there's 2 things I really don't like talking about.
That's very true.
I don't like talking about politics, and I don't like talking about religion. Don't care for it. It's a no-win situation either way. In fact, if I would have known that Decode DC was a political show and not a comic book show, I probably wouldn't agree to it.
Definitely not in our first batch of shows anyway, yeah. But that turned out okay.
You're right, but there's going to be some things that are going to color and shade maybe how we feel about this show. Probably the largest is we're both Christian.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think either one of us is what you would imagine when you say the word Christian, if what you imagine is the Westboro Baptist Church. Or
Correct.
If what you imagine is the guys who were behind the Hobby Lobby case, or the Chick-fil-A scenario.
Right.
We're both pretty progressive Christians.
True. I would say that you're probably the better Christian, family
Well, as far
going
as
to church
attendance-
3 days a week. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I go 3 days a week. I do go. I go a couple of days a week. I go Sunday mornings. I go Wednesday nights.
Well, and there's going to be one other big factor that probably shades our discussion, and that is born and raised in the South.
Oh, absolutely. So we are both colored by the Southern Methodist, the Baptist, the Southern Baptist especially.
The Pentecostal.
The modern day evangelical. Those are our
The
neighbors.
Cajun Catholic.
Yeah, indeed. The Cajun Catholic, us especially here in Louisiana. So yeah, we do have that background. Now, the other question that you might be asking yourself is, are they going to give fair voice to other religious shows? And yes, absolutely. We were talking about that on the way into the studio today. At least in the next month or so, we'll do another religious episode. We may even go ahead and make that our trifecta, our next trifecta episode, where we pick, let's say, 3 different world religion podcasts and discuss those all in one go. We'll do more in depth as well. I don't know about you, Josh. I plan on reviewing podcasts for a long, long time.
We'll see.
All right, then. So let's get to this one, especially knowing that we come from that Southern Christian background ourselves, and then we also are some varying shades of Christian as far as our public connection with the faith. There we go. All right.
Perfect.
So there's our biases, folks. What is this show about? To me, I don't think and we do alternate titles once upon a time. We used to do that. We do that late in the show. I don't think this should be That God Show. I think it should be That Jesus Show. It is, they do have theological discussions, but this is much more Christ-centered and Christian-centered than God in general. I had a different thought going into the show.
They always bring the focus back to, and not even necessarily the entire Bible, right? Because you have the Old Testament there that you really never hear them discuss. But they always tend to bring topics back to Jesus himself, really.
Who are they? The two guys behind this show, Benjamin L. Corey. You can follow him on Twitter at Benjamin Corey. And Matthew Paul Turner. You can follow him on Twitter. And I love this Twitter handle. Jesus needs new PR.
Yeah,
I thought that's amazing Twitter handle. I follow both these guys. That's how I heard about the show, actually. One of them tweeted about it. I didn't know anything about this podcast before we reviewed it, other than that it existed. I do read both of these guys' writings occasionally, and so I had some general idea of who they were and some of their general theological stances going into the thing. But to me, if I was going to try to sum up the show and tell you what the content is about, it's discussions between the two of them, and they occasionally have guests on, about theology. And it's really more, though, than theology. It's about the Christian walk and Christian life. And sometimes they do that through the lens of current topics, i.e. one of the episodes I listened to, they were talking about the cake baking fiasco and whether or not bakers with sincerely held religious beliefs should be allowed to discriminate and say, I'm not going to bake a cake for a gay wedding.
Well, I don't know another way to put this, but I felt like this was, I'm not going to say anti-church Jesus podcast, but they don't really prescribe that that being a member or part of or engrossed in a church is necessarily right for everybody, or that it's good for everybody. So that I thought that was interesting because I thought I would have gotten an earful of it. Just by it being called That God Show. I was like, okay, great. What denomination are they? What doctrine am I going to have to listen to? And really, it's not one.
It's not. You're right. They both come from different faiths. You and I were talking off mic. One of them, and we both think it's Benjamin Corey.
I believe
it's Benjamin Corey, is an Anabaptist.
Which
you didn't even know existed as a denomination, except for
from Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. He has an episode on it, and anytime that was said or brought up, which isn't very often, the Anabaptists, I always thought in my head I was like, Anabaptists. Wow, what do I know about Anabaptists? They did some messed up shit in Germany quite a long time ago.
Oh man. That's a heck of a reference to have.
It's the only reference I had.
I'm sure Benjamin, though, would appreciate that. He's also going to explain to you why his faith is very little connected to those actions, I'm sure. But I found a lot to like about this show. I found a lot to like about these two guys. And let's segue from there, from the content, let's talk about host likability. Benjamin Corey and Matthew Paul Turner. Did you have a preference?
Yes. I like Matt better.
You like Matt?
Yeah.
What do they say? MPT? That's what they say in their show notes all the time.
Yeah, I like Matt better just because Benjamin still kind of falls into that very
he does have an NPR voice.
We're going to talk about Jesus now, guys. What has our Lord and Savior done for us today? Right? He kind of falls into that.
Well, I think sometimes Matthew is so excited about the real world application of what they've been discussing. They're talking about missions, or they're talking about giving, or they're talking about the way you treat your neighbor, or they're talking about or they're talking about equality, marriage equality, for instance, in the episode that I referenced earlier about the cakes. And he's just passionate. He's fired up, and he's talking about real world stuff. And then Benjamin's like, but we talk about Jesus, y'all. But we talk about Jesus. Don't forget, to bring it back. And I think they're a great balance together. Again, we talk all the time about host match, the match of the two together. These guys have very distinct voices, so it makes them easier to pick apart, even from the first episode or two that you've listened to. And also, they've got distinct personalities, distinct worldviews that bring in those different styles. But you're right. If you've got a problem with the soft-spoken, if maybe you had let's say if you had a youth minister that you really hate, Benjamin Corey might take
I don't
you back
want to say
in a bad way.
soft-spoken. I don't want to like marginalize him or stereotype him.
No, not at all.
But very just calm.
Yeah,
Very calm.
Absolutely. So let's go from host likability. Let's talk about audio quality for a minute. This is the one knock that I've really got against the show.
Thank God, because I thought maybe I was listening to it wrong.
No, man, it wasn't you.
Okay.
The show is a little hollow overall. Every single episode. I'm assuming that it's a recording issue. It's something about where they're recording, or the fact maybe they're recording it just on one end or something.
Yeah,
I
didn't feel like they were in the same room.
That's possible. I know in some cases I know in some episodes that's the case.
Right, and I listened. So I'm trying a new thing whenever I'm listening to these podcasts. I try to listen in my car on Bluetooth. Mm-hmm. I try to listen on just my phone, and then I try to listen on like a nice set of headphones. That's how I break up the 3 episodes.
I think that's really nice. I don't always do that for every episode. I do that always in the range of my podcast listening. So generally through the course of the 3 or 4 episodes that we listen to, I've hit some of those moments every time. But it's good to do that because you notice drastic differences sometimes. Errors flaws that you won't notice in one medium.
True, but they kind of, the hollowness kind of carries over across all.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is the one big knock. Is a very, and again, I'm not sure what the issue is. I think it's just mostly recording in less than ideal rooms. Overall,
I think one of them has to be recording in a room that's not soundproof. That's what the issue is,
or not even like baffled at all,
right,
so that
correct.
you're really getting like a ringing in the room. Overall, though, it is not unlistenable. Of all of the shows that I have listened to, enjoyed, and I'm going to recommend on this show, this is like way down towards the bottom of the audio spectrum of the shows that I like and will stay subscribed to. This is right at the bottom of tolerable for me.
And if you're listening now and you've thought about doing a podcast or want to do a podcast in the future, go get some egg crates, put it right behind the mic, and that generally solves the problem.
Grandma's blanket, man.
Yeah.
Put up grandma's quilt.
Yeah.
You know, you can hang a quilt in a corner of a room and just go talk into that corner. Just go talk into that corner. Put your mic in that corner with you, and that really will make a world of a difference. So we've talked about audio quality. We talked about host likability. We've talked about content. We have not discussed the production values. Very simple. They got theme in and theme out. What did you think about the theme song? The song is I'm Not Afraid.
Yeah.
I did not care for it. I think I get I think they're talking about like fear of God. Maybe it's like a loose reference to that sort of. I don't know. I didn't get the reference that there's
I would have thought that it's just not afraid of being yourself. Like so the first episode that I listened to was about fundamentalism and getting away from a fundamentalist church, which caught me off guard, completely surprised. I don't say it's like episode 3. So that comment, I was like, all right, because a couple of reasons I don't like to talk about politics or religion. Politics, number one, I don't really identify with a political group in the U.S. Like I'm not really a Democrat. I'm not really Republican. There's not a party. There's not a party for me. There's just not. Right? Like that evolution hasn't happened yet.
So regardless of what company you keep, you start talking politics, you tick somebody in the room off badly.
Right. And when it comes to religion and Christianity in particular, I was lucky enough that my parents let me explore growing up. So I was able to go to a Baptist church, a Methodist church, Pentecostal. I was able to see the different denominations. And while I think they all have something very redeeming about them, none of them have it right. They just don't. Like there's no way to have it right because people, and they said something in this podcast talking about the Britney, no, I can't remember what episode it was. But they were talking in that episode about how everyone wants to have a voice and everyone wants to be right. But when you do that, you lose focus on the person, which is what Jesus really is about people, regardless of where they come from and how to make that person more comfortable or better or enrich their lives. And people get caught up in the theology of everything. And so for that reason, it's hard to have a discussion and not offend one group or another when that's not your intention at all.
Yes, absolutely. You're gonna send me straight into our favorite moments section here, but we've already broken down the different qualities of this show. Let's go into it. You were sort of circling one of my favorite moments. It comes from episode 21. The whole episode was really great. It was the last one that I listened to, but Christian, and I'm going to sacrifice his name, Christian, I believe it was Priet, was how they were saying it. He was the guest sitting in instead of Benjamin Corey. He was sitting in with Benjamin Corey. They were talking about boundaries between different denominations and the idea that we as Christians tend to like patrol the boundaries of orthodoxy. Mm-hmm. Like we're like, here, this is what it means to be Christian. And then we work real hard to make sure that you don't step out of the bounds of that. And if anybody does, we're sure to label them and point at them. And they were describing a different way of doing that, which is the idea of identifying, are they headed towards Jesus or away from Jesus? And it's like a fundamental different way of looking. And that way people can come all along the spectrum and they are getting the right reinforcement for where they are along that spectrum. If they have just begun the idea of a Christian walk and they're like, hey, this is for me and this is the lifestyle that I want to lead now, but they are literally just on their way, well, then they're headed towards Jesus, and whatever flaw you might see in them, there's no reason to bring it up or like question about their orthodoxy or like, are they right on this belief or this ritual or that ritual? None of those are necessary. They're headed to Jesus and they're way out here on the timeline, so don't bother them. And then if you're right in the middle, then you can, the idea is at least that you would withstand further scrutiny because you're, i.e., like a church elder or something, you know? I don't know. I'd never heard it described that way, and I thought that was really interesting. The idea of the definition of Christian and who qualifies and who gets to decide that, and nobody does. That's the point. So I love that.
One of my favorite moments came from the episode about the third way, right? Which was a solid episode, and it really got to the core of Jesus cared about people and not theology, and the fact that some of the scripture they brought up or proof they brought up for it was part of the persecution of Christ was the fact that he healed on the Sabbath. And to him, it was like, it doesn't matter if it's the Sabbath. These people are hurting. These people need help. They need comfort. And that's what we're here for. And I thought that was fantastic.
That was really good. My other favorite moment, or I would say probably my other biggest favorite moment, came from the cake baking issue again. And I hate to bring that up all the time. But here are the episodes I listened to, by the way: 11, 18, 21, 20, and 22. I listened to a bunch out of order there. But in that episode, Matthew Paul Turner says, and he uses and I use this story actually too. There's the story where Jesus is asked about the custom of Roman soldiers forcing Jewish citizens to carry their packs. Roman soldiers would be marching along. They just grab a guy off the street and say, "Carry my gear."
Well, that's what Green Bay does to these school kids after training camp.
Do they really?
Yeah. They school kids show up on their bikes, and Green Bay players will ride the kids' bikes while the kids carry their gear.
Nice. All right. So that, except with soldiers and Jews. Okay.
Sure.
I think it was one of like the teachers or the Pharisees or something asked Jesus. They said, if the soldier tells us to do this, should we do it? And Jesus says, if the man asks you to walk with him, or if the man tells you to walk with him a mile, I say you should walk with him 2 miles. And Matthew Paul Turner turned that and he said, to me, Jesus is saying in this modern day, you're asking me, should I bake a cake for the gay couple? And I say, Jesus says, you bake 2 cakes. You bake that damn cake. But to turn it around, Benjamin, as you said, always bringing it back a little, like coming in with the love again. Benjamin Corey said, yeah, but you got to remember that sometimes it's especially hard for us to see someone who is wrong in the same way that we used to be. We know that. How did he say it? He said, I wrote it down here. He says, the hardest person to love sometimes is the one that reminds you most of your old self.
Yeah, no.
This is an issue. Marriage equality in particular is an issue that I used to be, in my mind, again, we're talking about politics and religion here, I guess. That's one that I used to be wrong on, I think. And I find it for myself, one of the ones that is very hard for me to sit idly by why someone else is what I think is currently wrong. Like, I mean, if you're out there and you're against marriage equality,
There's
it's
no
hard for me
right,
to keep my mouth shut.
Joel, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's only love.
Yeah, indeed. So get out of the way of the love. That's the way I feel about it. But anyway,
Now, here's what I do like. Here's what I do like about the show, and it did warm my heart as a Christian. I feel like this is an evolution of Christianity. I think understanding that the Bible is a living word and that everybody gets their own truth out of it, and because their truth may not be the same as yours, or the journey or the experience they've had may not be the same as yours, it doesn't make it any less valid. And they talk about that point several times, and I really appreciated it.
yeah, I appreciated lots about this show. All right, we've loved on it enough, I think. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. I'm going to give you my elevator pitch: light theological talk, heavy discussion of Christian life, particularly for progressive Christians. That's the way that I would put it.
I would say that hopefully we'll get to a point to where there is no delineation between progressive or conservative Christians.
Booyah! Look at you. I like it. The unity there from Josh. All right, let's rate this show, Josh. On Pod, we give earbuds in. We don't talk about stars. We don't do thumbs up. We give earbuds in. You can do a half earbud, one earbud, all the way up to 2 for each of us. You want me to start, or you want to start?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to give this show 1.5 earbuds with this caveat. Obviously, if you don't want to hear about Christianity, this show is not for you. There are going to be lots of other religious alternatives out there, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, we're going to talk about some of them. And here's the other thing, too. If you are a thorough fundamentalist, hardcore conservative Christian, this show is probably also not for you. I would say you ought to give it a try. You might be surprised how much you like Benjamin Corey in particular, and the idea of hearing ideas that you may disagree with is never a bad one.
I would have never thought to listen to a religious podcast in any capacity. Now that I've listened to this one, I feel like a podcast is a great way, a great medium to explore and learn and maybe get some questions answered that you have had about other religions. There has to be other podcasts out there. There's got to be some Jewish podcasts, some Buddhist podcasts. There just has to be, and I think it's a very interesting way to explore religion. So I'm with you. I'm right there. I think a 1.5 is what this gets. For that reason, I think that this is for me has been a great gateway into just theology in general for me, and what the world of podcasting has to offer in that category.
That's really exciting. It's I think pretty rare that you and I have the exact same rating on a show, so that's very exciting. And that is our review of That God Show, featuring Benjamin L. Corey. That's at Benjamin Corey on Twitter, and Matthew Paul Turner at Jesus Needs New PR on Twitter, if you want to follow those guys. We'll have links for all of that stuff in the show notes. Right now, let's get to a little listener feedback.
It's good that we're getting to listener feedback, because I hear that music about to come on.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, man. First of all, let's
What
talk.
a terrible gag.
Let's talk just a second. Let's talk just a second about last week's episode. Last week's episodes, we should say. We put out 2 reviews last week. We reviewed. What did we review? We started with Grown-Ups Read Things They Wrote as Kids.
Oh, yeah, and make sure we cut that so that people think that we actually know what we remember what we talked about the last week.
I might even go do for just a second and then cut to you saying cut all of that out.
It's a good idea.
So, yes, we reviewed Grown-Ups Read Things They Wrote as Kids. We also reviewed Guys We Effed in both the censored and uncensored versions. I hope everybody enjoyed those shows. As I listened to both of them, first of all, you and I talked about it, not to pat ourselves on the back. I thought we did a very fair job with our Guys We Effed review. I was very proud of that one in particular, and proud of reviewing that show when we did. However, I wish I had either bleeped everything that was adult language at all, like even adult or questionable, where there were too few bleeps in the censored or too many. I don't know. It straddled the line. You were right that it wasn't going to work as a gag,
Told
and it
ya.
didn't. So, mea culpa on that one. I'm very sorry for anybody who wasted their time or downloads with that. Now, having said that, some people were excited about that review, Josh. In particular, on Twitter, we heard from a little show called The Dork of All Trades. It's Dork of All Trades on Twitter, the DOAT podcast. They said that they had been waiting months for this one. They were one of the ones that actually requested sorry about last night and guys we effed in the first place, and they were definitely one of the ones that supported it when we asked for the hashtag. So
Right on.
Congratulations to the Dork of All Trades. Thanks for sticking with us through that. And also, I haven't mentioned this on the show yet, but they mentioned us on their podcast. They did an episode all about podcasts that they listen to, and one of the hosts in particular was had become a fan of ours, stumbled across us accidentally while they began to look for podcasts about podcasting.
It's overwhelmingly the podcast community have been supportive and positive. And I don't know about you, Joel, but I'm extremely thankful for that feedback.
Oh, man, absolutely. Which along those lines, I should mention this as well. If you are a podcaster that listens to our show, and I know there are a lot of you that do other shows but listen to ours, and you're not currently listening to a show called Podcasters Group Therapy, you should go check that out. Corey Finneran, one of the hosts, who is also the host of Ivy Envy, which we've reviewed before. Tawny Finneran, his wife, is another one of the hosts. She does Mommy's Cocktail Hour, which we reviewed. And then the third host is Nick Schuberling, who does a Bengals podcast, which we haven't gotten to. Neither one of us are Bengals fan, but we may get there someday. He's a good host on this show. The three of them do a show together called Podcasters Group Therapy, where they talk about every week a different topic that affects podcasters. I've really gotten into that show, gotten a lot out of it so far. And on one of the first episodes, Corey mentioned us as his pick of the week. Every week they either suggest a different podcast or sometimes they talk about a different app that they're using or something.
I'm telling you, Corey's got a great thing going. He gets to talk about the Cubs every week, and his wife makes him cocktails every week.
I know. It's pretty outstanding. All right, so check that show out, Podcasters Group Therapy, if you're a podcaster like us. Here's some more feedback from Twitter, and by the way, you can find us at Pod on Pod. Jeff Corintayer says, just a quick thank you for the No Such Thing as a Fish podcast. Funniest thing I've heard in a long time. Jeff, you were not the only one we heard from on that one. Lots of folks found No Such Thing as a Fish for the first time when we
Jeff,
reviewed it.
If you love that show, the best thing you can do is go and review it.
Not only can you go and review it, but I got to tell you, have you checked out QI on BBC America yet?
I have not. I don't want to. For me, no, like I know QI was first. I get it. But for me, No Such Thing as a Fish is its own entity. And I don't want, like, if it shows what any of these people look like, I don't want to know.
Here, I could be wrong.
It's me. It's mine. I'm lucky that it was shared with me and that I got to share it with the podcasting world. But I don't want to. I don't want to break that innocence, man.
I could be wrong, and I hope that the QI elves or some of their faithful followers will correct me if I am. You can tweet me at Pod on Pod. But I don't believe there's a single person on the show that is on the podcast. The podcast are the QI elves. Those are the behind the scenes, the writers and the researchers,
yeah.
right? So it's Stephen Fry is the host of the show, and then you've got a panel that is revolving. And the idea is that he has the facts and he will sort of ask a question to elicit a fact. And one of the panelists sometimes knows it. And then maybe they can elaborate on it. Maybe he has to from his cards. And then that generally springs off into other side facts. Everybody's trying to one up each other and make jokes. And at the end, there's a points tally that is completely made up. He swears it's not. It is, in fact, made up. Of course it is. But it is a very different show. I think it's a nice companion. And it's one of those things that I've been stockpiling on the TiVo, so that like Sunday afternoons I got 2 or 3 QIs to go through. That's what I've now found. So there you go. If you like No Such Thing as a Fish and you found it because of us, check out QI on BBC America if you're stateside, or just what is it on? The One? Do they call it that in the UK? It's not. They don't call it the BBC, do they? Don't they just call it like The One or something?
I mean, they've only got 3 stations.
That's what I'm saying. Anyway, I don't know what they do over there. Fish and chips and whatnot. All right, you got anything else to add, sir?
No, get out there and review your own shows.
Indeed. Do you have any idea what we're going to review next week?
Can I have some guesses?
Sure.
Okay. Are we going to review 99% Invisible?
No.
You mean not next week, but eventually?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Are we going to review Hollywood Babylon?
Not next week.
That'll be ways down the road. I get it. I feel ya. Are we going to review Hopscotch and Haggerty?
I've never even heard of that one.
Okay. So
I think the answer is yes, though. I need to. I had a different show in mind, but that's what we're going to review next week. Hopscotch and Haggerty.
It's not a real show.
Oh, no. No, you've ruined my life. All right, so here's what we're going to do, Josh. We're going to go and record.
It should be, please,
we're going to go
somebody.
record a new show called Hopscotch and Haggerty, and then we're going to review it real quick. So we're going to do that and then get back to it. No, is there really not a show called Hopscotch and Haggerty?
No, I just made it up.
Oh, that makes me so sad. Hopscotch and Haggerty is a wonderful name for a show. There is no Hopscotch and Haggerty, folks. All right, no, here's what we're going to review, Josh. The self-indulgent podcast.
Ooh, what's that about?
I don't know.
We'll find out.
It's listener submitted, and we're going to check it out next week. So,
thanks, listeners.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Until next week.
I'm Josh.
I'm Joel, and this has been the podcast.
Are you wanting something funny? Are you wanting something smart? A show on astral projection or the history of art? Do you want to learn a language or how to play guitar? Just leave it up to Joel and Josh. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Pod on Pod is a proud member of the Procast Network, a Procreate production. Procreate is a community of artists in film, music, the digital arts, and the fine arts that helps them connect and collaborate on projects. You can find out more at teamprocreate.com. Also be sure to check out one of our other great shows like Me and the Geek. Are you a geek? If the answer is yes, I've got just the show for you. If the answer is no, well, I might have the show to explain why you're wrong. meandthegeekpod.com is where you need to go. Visit us every week for a different conversation with a new geek and a peek into their own geeky world. You see, here at Me and the Geek, we believe that everyone is geeky about something. Find out what your geek is, and then let your geek flag fly. With Me and the Geek on iTunes, in Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts now.
Our musical guest this week is the Sam Brown Band.